Guys, I want to answer a very important question today. Is it still worth to pull Blade? Now, Blade is one of the DPS units that are available to pull. He's on the banner right now, alongside Rune May. You've got a whole 2 weeks left to pull him. I know this video is a little bit late, but he's still there, so it's still relevant. So, before I get into whether or not Blade is still worth pulling, now we're roughly 6-7 months into the game, let's go over what his kit is. Let's have a look what he does. First things first, the most important thing you need to know about Blade is he is not like the other DPS units in the game. He is a HP scaler. That means all of his damage is based off how high his HP is. His attacks, that doesn't really matter. The only thing that you care about is HP and your crit rate and crit damage. Nothing else matters for Blade. He is an incredibly easy unit to use. His traces are pretty simple. He's all about his skill and his follow-up attack. His ultimate doesn't really matter. It's okay. Basically, how you play Blade is you activate his skill. His skill for 3 turns will increase the damage of his normal attacks. Blade is not exactly skill point positive when he uses this ability. It means when he uses his basic attacks, they will not generate skill points, but he will not use any skill points. He consumes a skill point every 3 turns to activate his skill, and then you normal attack with him. Once this is activated, you can't skill again, you can only normal attack. And ultimate. His ultimate, one thing you need to know is this will consume health, and every time he hits when he is in his skilled state, he will also hurt himself. He can take him down to a minimum of 1 HP this way. His ultimate will, when used, will put Blade up to 50% HP. This will means basically Blade can sort of self-sustain. If he's really, really low, you can ultimate and put him back up to 50% health. But ideally, you want him above 50% health. You don't want to do this. When you activate your ult, you ultimately want him to go pretty much from full health to half health. You kind of want Blade at full health as much as possible, which is very important when it comes to teams. He also, part of his ultimate, does damage. Pretty much the damage that is done to Blade is calculated and added to like his ultimate damage. The more Blade gets hurt, the more damage his ultimate does. Finally, his follow-up attack. This will activate every 5 times Blade gets hurt. You want Blade to be hurt as much as possible to trigger this follow-up attack. It does a lot of damage. Like every time he gets hit, he gets a charge, and he will heal a little bit once he does it. With these 2 abilities, even though he's meant to be targeted a lot, he will heal quite a lot. So his skill and attack reduces health, and his ultimate can give health or remove health, and his follow-up attack can give health. His traces are okay, they're fine. They're fine. He gets crit rate in his traces, but yeah, pretty much Blade's an incredibly easy unit to use. Your skill, you hit, you ult, and you do follow-up attacks. He does sort of work with Topaz because he has a lot of damage in his follow-up attacks. A lot of the big numbers you see from Blade is from his follow-up attack rather than his ultimate. Even though this can do incredibly large damage if he gets hit a lot, most of his damage comes from his follow-up attack. Weirdly. Yeah, pretty simple. Now to build, he's also very simple. He has his own signature set, the Longest Disciple, which basically gives HP and increases the crit rate to like, you get 16 crit rate for being hit twice, which is pretty good. 2 hits and you've got lots of crit rate, which means while my crit ratio is terrible, I am meeting the requirement of this set to get the bonus. Yay! You want him on Resilient Arena, so that's the 2 sets. these two. You probably have loads of these because it's run alongside the speed set, which everybody farms for the supports. So you probably have loads of these already to build. He's relatively simple because you just have crit damage. You really don't want a crit rate piece here because he gets lots of crit rate in his tracers. His light cone gives you a lot of crit rate if you get his light cone. And while this wants a lot of crit rate, you really want to be like getting crit rate on your other pieces and the speed crit damage ideally. Then you just get a wind ball and a HP rope. You do not need to run speed on Blade. Blade is one of the slowest. I think he's slower than Clara actually. Slowest units in the entire game. To build speed on Blade is wasting substats. Honestly, like I know Blade doesn't really need anything, but like some break effect could be good, or you could get him some effect resistance so he doesn't get stun locked so much. He doesn't need energy regeneration rate. Like even though his ult does lots of damage, him getting it regularly actually isn't very important. The best thing about Blade is he is incredibly consistent with his damage. Incredibly consistent. He will do the same damage very easily all battle with very little additional help, which is good because he's a HP scaler. Which means if you didn't know, most of the light cones that are available to us support attack scaling heroes. Like there are no other DPSs that scale off HP, and especially not in the destruction route. Most of the light cones aren't designed for a HP scaler, which means Blade's free-to-play options are very minimal. You really only ever want this light cone for him if you're free to play. Spare no effect. This is the light cone you want. You want as many refinements on this as possible. This is his best free to play weapon. All the other light cones are just kind of on him because they like buff attack, and that's about it. Like they all buff attack in some way. Where this light cone increases damage, which means all of Blade's damage is increased, regardless of like where the scaling comes from. Where the other light cones just don't really do that. You can, like, if you look at its attack that's increased. It does damage increase and weakness break, but again, like because it's mostly attack that benefits, and you have to weakness break an enemy to get this bit. Not really very good. You've got Clara's one. Again, it increases attack, so not very good. It does restore HP, but and it does have a 24% damage increase, so it's okay. You can put Clara's on it, but he's not really benefiting from the first part of this, the 24% attack increase. He doesn't benefit from this. He doesn't benefit from this. Again, crit rate, attack percentage. You do get crit rates for defeating an enemy, which is pretty good, I guess. But again, this one increases attack percentage. You just want spare no effect on him if you don't get his signature light cone. Fortunately, if you don't have it, it is on the light cone event warp next to his best slot weapon. So there's no harm on pulling on this banner to get this or to get this. It's a win-win if you do not have this light cone. You want this for him. Because all the other light cones, they aren't very good for him. And if you don't have this, just put on the Hertogthor one. It's the best. The Clara's one, they're both fine, but they're not really doing much for him, which is one of the problems with Blade. Like Relics, he's really easy to build for, but when it comes to teams and light cones, there are less options to improve his damage, because you see, I have like a dual setup here, but because Blade is a HP scaler, not a lot of the harmonies work with him. So you have Ting Young, who buffs attack, and I think her ult also increases damage percentage and energy. Blade doesn't really care about getting his ult back quickly. Ideally, Blade's going to be hit a lot, so he doesn't really benefit that much from Ting Yang. You can run them in a party together, but he's not benefiting from her kit as much as someone else does, honestly. Asta, she again gives attack buffs and speed. He doesn't benefit from the attack buffs, and he's really, really slow, so he doesn't really benefit from the speed. You'd have to build some speed on him to try and get to like benefit at all from her ultimate, because I don't think, like, without building speed on him, that she can push him into the next speed bracket. Again, with Hanya, she gives a lot of speed, but I don't think the speed she gives is enough to put him into the next speed bracket. Maybe, I don't know, but I don't think so. And again, he doesn't benefit from either of the buffs bonuses. I think Hanya does a damage increase with her skill, but again, he's not benefiting from the majority of her kit. And Yukong, arguably, he can benefit more from, because he does crit buffs, but not really. I think he also gives attack buffs. I don't use Yukong, so I'm not entirely sure what she does. And Yukong, you kind of have to manipulate her speed to make her work, and Blade's really slow, which might make it easier to manipulate her speed around him. But I feel like they'd fall out of like timings quite easily because he is so slow. That means Blade has 4 really good teammates. I'm missing one of them, but we'll talk through them. Rune Mei is really good. She's good for everyone, so she's indeed good for Blade. Bronya, Blade loves Bronya. If you're running a Blade hyper team, you ideally want Bronya to make him go fast. You don't need to build speed on Blade because Bronya goes fast. If she is on the hyper team, she makes him go as quick as she does. So it doesn't matter that Blade is really, really slow. Plus, you can put on her or the Light Cone and Penacony relic set to give him an increased damage buff if you want. I don't personally, but you can. I have Bronya's Light Cone, so I don't. I don't. And then you have Pella and Silver Wolf as Nihility characters, because Blade doesn't benefit from any attack percentage buffs. Your alternative is Defense Shred, which both Pella and Silver Wolf have in the kit. He does benefit greatly from both of these characters. Pella a bit more than Silver Wolf because Blade has splash damage and Pella has an AoE ult where Silver Wolf is single focus, but Silver Wolf's Defense Shred is a lot bigger than Pella. They're both fine for Blade, honestly. You can use either of them if you have them. I think it just really depends on weakness types at the end of the day. That's if you're running Blade in a hyper team. Now, because Blade doesn't really benefit that much from harmony units, like, he has 4 units that benefit him. 3 of them are 5 stars. You don't really have any 4-star options, and you can use Fu Xuan as well to buff him with her crit damage buff. And you can also, if you have her, use Bailu, who increases HP. You've also got Lynx, who ensures that Blade gets hit a lot more in a hyper team. All very good options. But where Blade really shines outside of Blade Hyper, which Blade Hyper is fine, it's just you don't have very many options for him to buff him. Obviously, we'll get more units in the future that will either increase HP, maybe, or do more defense shreddy things that he can do more damage. Who knows? But if you're not running Blade Hyper, then what you can do with Blade, which is very unique to Blade, is you can run him in teams that require high skill point cost, such as Dan Heng Infinita Lune. Blade fits very comfortably in this team, especially if you have Locha. Locha's just incredible, like, where you need skill points. But in this team, because Blade is slow and everyone else is quite fast, and Lucha is faster than Blade, you have Ting Young goes first. She gets Dan's ult off. He eats up all the skill points. Lucha attacks. There's one extra skill point, and then Blade eats it. And as long as and they can keep up a really good rotation for 3 or 4 turns without anybody losing out on a skill point to their maximum damage. Blade is incredible on dual DPS teams because he only requires 1 skill point every 3 turns, which means if you have a team that requires regular skill point usage, I mean, Dan's quite the extreme example, but the fact that he can work in a Dan team really, really nicely goes to show how flexible Blade is as a dual DPS unit. He just fits anywhere. You can put him on any team beside another DPS, and because he doesn't require a Harmony unit to buff him to do his damage, Blade will just do his damage. And they've kind of designed Blade to do really good damage by himself because they know there's no Harmony units to buff him. He has to hold up by himself to do the damage he does. There's not really many people who can support him into doing this damage. Obviously a team of Ruin Mei, a Harmony unit that buff kind of benefits everybody, would be better here. Blade doesn't necessarily need it. Blade will be doing 120,000 damage every single round regardless. Whatever you're doing with it, he's going to do that damage. You don't have to pay any attention to him. He will do it. He is a regular, reliable damage outputter. He just does it. It's incredible. And when it comes to stuff like Memory of Chaos, where you're not doing enough damage with your hyper unit, you can just throw away one of your Harmony units and just throw Blade on the team, and your overall team damage will increase because you're doing an extra 120k damage a turn, which is not too dissimilar to what Dan's doing a turn. Blade just does his own thing and it's all good. Now, there is arguments to be made that Blade doesn't stand up against a unit against Dill Pickle here, and Jingliu. It's true, he doesn't. Damage-wise, he doesn't hold up to those two. But this is a game that encourages you to dip a toe in every single element type via Memory of Chaos. You can try and do this with Electric or Quantum or whatever, but it is designed with Wind weakness in mind. And if you don't use Quantum or Wind weakness, you're going to get punished. You can try and hardball it with Dill or Jingle if you really want to, but for the best experience of this, you're going to want to use the element type they have. And if you don't have Silly, or you haven't invested highly in your QQ, who are you using on this side? Well, you know who I'm using. I'm using all of them because Blade doesn't really remove any skill points in the team from QQ, and he adds more damage when she isn't consistent on dealing it out. He's just a great partner that just sits there and does his thing. You don't need Pele. You can put whoever you want there. You can Stuffington Young if you want. This is just an example. Blade will just sit there and he'll do his thing. He doesn't care if he has a unit buffing him. Now, if you have invested into some good solid DPSs, you have Dill and you have Jingle and they're getting you through content, even though you got the weakness there, then obviously maybe you don't need Blade. I feel like it's difficult because I don't know if Blade is going to have the longevity as much as other units do, because he would need a very specific harmony unit to buff his damage. He'd need a harmony unit that increases health rather than attack, or harmony units that increase damage percent rather than attack. Obviously you have Rune May now, so that's another unit that's pretty good for him. But you not kind of need more units like that to make him a bit more flexible as a destruction unit. But honestly, even if you're like the Blade hyper teams that you have available are pretty good. They get me through Memory of Chaos. And there's not really many options for a wind DPS. Like if you're actually using a wind DPS, you've got Dan Hang like hunt mode and Sampo as your two options. I know Sampo can do a lot of damage if you build him correctly. Dan Hang is a bit more complicated. I think I don't use him. I'm sorry. Made easier, I think, if you have Welt. I believe. Like if you're getting by with these two, Blade is at the end of the day an upgrade, but he's so comfy as a character, and unless they make enemies harder to defeat than they are already, I feel like if nothing else, Blade will have a place on the team as additional damage. He's a good dual DPS unit. The only times that he feels a bit off in those regards is if you don't have a skill point for him when it comes to his turn. So most units have abilities that allow them to use their skills before you enter battle. So make sure you use those, obviously. But to answer the question, do I think Blade is still worth pulling? I am a little concerned that Blade will fall off. I think on the tiers people put him at A rank, but they also put Kafka at A rank, and Kafka is only going to increase in value rather than decrease in value. I think Blade does have value as a second DPS unit. His hyper team is still really good, and if we get more defense shred in other units' kits, his hyper teams will increase. There are obviously other ways he could be buffed in the future. I don't think, as much as people talk about units being power creeped in this game, I don't think Hoyoverse actually likes power creeping units. Like, Rune Ray is not actually a power crept unit to any of the Harmony units. Sparkle, who you might have seen some kit leaks for, is not a power crept version of Bronya and Hanya. Not really. She's just that 5-star unit. Does multiple things, and it's a big question there if you even need it in the first place. People say Dill is a power creep or Blade. Like, that's not true. Dill costs a lot of skill points. Blade doesn't. Blade can do similar-ish damage to Dill, especially if he gets hit a lot. I've seen Blade do incredible damage if he's taken a lot of damage in a rotation. He can quite easily catch up damage wise to Dill. And I have him at like E0, and this light cone's new. I love my Blade so much I got his light cone. I love Blade. Blade is one of my most favourite characters to use because he is so easy. So very easy. There is no unit that is so brains off as Blade is. You can run him memory. You can like run him in teams with like ridiculous amount of skill points free because he doesn't need them and no one else does, especially if you run him with Locha. Let's talk about Locha for a second. Locha, besides Lynx, is probably one of the best Abundance users, Abundance characters to use with him, because he keeps Blade at full health pretty much constantly, and you need Blade to keep his health high. Ideally, it doesn't really matter, but if his HP is high and he uses his ultimate, then you lose a lot of HP, which then means your next thing will do even more damage because you've taken off a lot of damage. And then Locha will just heal him back up to full health again. Blade isn't at risk of dying as much as it might seem with his kit. He has a lot of healing in his kit, as well as a lot of damage in his kit. And obviously, while he gets hit a lot, it's fine. Definitely does a good combo of Locha and Lynx. Everybody should be getting Lynx, so she is perfect partner for Blade and ensuring he takes as much damage as possible while keeping him alive, which is important. Yeah, he's just a really fun character to use because you don't have to think too hard. He just kind of works and does his own thing, and it's kind of nice to have a unit like that. He's not a must pull by any stretch, like not even remotely, but he does give you those options for dual DPS teams. His hyper team is fine, and he might have increased value in the future. If you want to save a Penacony, that's fine as well. Or get Kafka. She's pretty good too. Alright. If you have any questions, post them down below. I've had Blade a long time. He's my favourite character. You might be able to tell from my maxed out traces and the fact that I have his light cone. I need to rebuild him a little bit because his crit ratio is a bit scuffed. This needs to be higher so he can do more damage. But that's fine. I've invested all everything into Blade. I really enjoy him. And if you're wishing for him, I wish you good luck. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.